Welcome to MSP 1337. I'm your host, Chris Johnson, a show dedicated to cybersecurity challenges, solutions, a journey together, not alone. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of MSP 1337. I'm joined this week by Desraie Thomas of Astendio.
Ostendio.
Perfect. Welcome to the show.
Welcome to the show as well. Welcome to having me. Thank you so much. One of my
So,
favorite parts about the word Ostendio
yes.
is, can you just imagine Harry Potter? Ostendio, the word for
Oh, that's
compliance.
perfect. Yeah, I like it. I like it. And suddenly it's exactly what you want it to be because it is magic, right? I mean, one might say a lot of cybersecurity seems to fall into the land of, well, must be magical beings and potions in order to pull this off, which, yeah, I think sometimes that's true.
I
Uh,
agree with you.
so we came up with like a bajillion things to talk about today. We know that this is Mental Health Month. We've got what's happening at Astendio. We've got ChannelCon, literally like I think it's like 70 days away now, so it's like right around the corner. And the last thing, or maybe the first thing, is to talk about all of the layoffs that we saw and just kind of where, like talking a little bit about like your career path. Like I think I met you. I think it was after Passportal or like right around the end of the Passportal days, right before you went to Datto. And so a lot of things have happened in your career path. And I'm going to say, from an IT perspective, a very short period of time.
Yeah, it's been a crazy, crazy adventure. I like look at the last 10 years of my life, and I don't think that there's never been another 10 years where that much change has happened in that quick period of time. I look at 10 years ago, probably sitting, I was a travel agent at the time, and being like, travel agent was fun. It was a really good job, but I also was watching the entire industry be like nosediving,
Yeah.
nosediving very, very quickly.
Kayak
And
is
then
out, and now good luck.
yeah, exactly. What am I going to do next? And I've talked to a lot of people about this and been on a lot of different podcasts having this conversation. And I think the most interesting thing is that 90% of people I talk to will talk about getting into tech by accident or
Sure.
falling into it, or like you just randomly had a conversation with someone that someone was like, "Oh, well, do you know about technology?" And being
Yeah.
from Calgary oil and gas, I never thought I'd get into tech, and I'm so excited. Working for Passportal was one of the best decisions I ever made.
It's funny you say that, and the falling into it or by accident. I got a job right out of college after working at U-Haul because that's very glamorous in the tech space. And the job I got the first day, I learned what Windows NT was and Windows 2000 at the same time. And then I was handed this orange and white card that said MSDN on it, a toll-free number that said I had 5 incidents that I could use to call Microsoft for tech support. And back then, you could call Microsoft to get tech support. So that was how I started. So very similar, like truly just kind of like, here you go,
Yeah.
good luck. And also, you're responsible for ordering lunch for everybody in the office. So you got this.
I'll one up the also you got one up that one is when I did my interview, it was with Dan Wensley, and he was like, "Are you good at speaking on stage?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm outgoing, I'm awesome, of course I'm good at." He's like, "Okay, well, you're going to talk in stage in New York in 2 weeks." So me, A, I'd never spoken on stage. I just assumed I would be good at it. B, I didn't really understand the channel because I didn't really understand technology in the first place. So like it took a while to even be able to like verbalize like what Passportal did, what we did, and all of those things. And there I am on stage 2 weeks later when I realized that I have massive, horrible stage fright. Welcome to anxiety. And
Yeah.
that was one of the best experiences. And anyone who watched it, the worst presentation they've probably watched and or I've ever done in my life. I had flashcards, and Mana will tease me about that. I had flashcards and I dropped them.
Oh no.
Yeah, it was amazing. It was fantastic. And I loved it so much that I kept doing it and hopefully got better, I think.
Well, that doesn't sound like it. Yeah, I've heard you speak. I think that you for sure have come a long ways from the flashcards. I
Thank
was
you.
always certain of being able to speak in public, but I never really had to do it, like you said, from a stage. But I did have an interesting experience after I'd been doing it for a while that has forever changed me, and I always encourage people to try it, is to play PowerPoint roulette. So you get told a topic and you're given slides you haven't seen. And as they rotate the slides, you have to talk to the deck about the topic that you've been given. And after that, I realized that no matter how bad I might have been prepared for whatever's happening next, it's not PowerPoint. It's not PowerPoint roulette. So that took my nerves away. So like I still get nervous sometimes, but the actual like the anxiety and stress and like sweating and like it went away after that one thing because I'm like, there's never gonna be anything worse than that because at least I know the topic that I've been asked to present on, at least in the abstract. So, but
I
you win.
I think I don't know if I ever want to force myself through something like that, but
No,
I also can see the value of it so much that I feel like it's like doing it over and over again. Like you get the carpet pulled out from under your feet.
yeah.
Eventually, you're like, oh no, I know to jump when the carpet's being pulled on my feet, and I can stand steady.
Yeah,
But
and you
I
don't have
don't
to do
know.
it with a lot of people, right? You could just do it like with three or four people and just do it just to see if you can do it because there's something to it that says, huh, I now see this through a different lens than my own, and that means that everybody that's listening, all I'm trying to do is convince them that I'm somewhat eloquent on this topic, even if I'm not. So it's the best way to tell the largest tall tale you've ever told about something that's not real in the first place.
Love it.
So that kind of lends us into like we just did the whole like, fake it till you make it. We talked about layoffs. You went through several rounds. You're now at Estendio. Before we get into the current role and some of the things that I think are amazing that Estendio is doing and just the mind shift of what's behind it, which I think really sets it apart from other players in the space. Let's talk a little bit about what we're seeing happen in the threat landscape that's particularly I think more relevant on the consumer side of things or personal side of things than it is work. Because as I always say, if it's happening at work, it's happening at home. And if it's happening at home, it's going to be happening at work. And you brought up one, and I think it'd be a great place to start. Let's talk about your experience and what you learned with regards to pig butchering.
Oh, pig
Because it's a great
butchering.
name.
It is. It's a great name. Did you do you know what exactly it's come from?
I I don't know what the name comes from, but I'm very familiar with what pig butchering is, particularly when you get into things like the crypto exchanges and the ability to make buku amount of money and then have it basically all yanked out from underneath you when you go to withdraw your money from this amazing, 5x on your
Yeah.
investment that turns into, but if you invest more, because usually they take money at like they start out at like they'll do like a start out with like give me 10 grand, I'll show you how well the this works. It's a real portal, it's real crypto
Yeah.
exchange in a lot of
hmm
cases. Then you go, oh well, imagine what you could do with more money. So like if you were to put like 200 or 300 or even $1 million in, your ROI in 90 days would be 5x. And they're like, awesome. They see the dollars show up and then they go, I need to pull some of this out. And they're like, okay, so it's going to take about 10 days. But first, you're going to have to put another $100,000 in to cover the taxes before we can then pull any money out. So now they're at 1.1 million and everything goes dark.
Yeah. That was like so the pig butchering part was what got me where the name came from, just because
Sure,
like it's so bad, but it's so good. Where
sure,
they apparently the name came from the idea of you take little piglets and you fatten them up and then until they get really big and then you're done with them and like you move
sure.
on and get more little pigs and then do the same
Okay,
thing. So
perfect, perfect analogy.
yeah, exactly. And then I don't know how about you, but I've definitely engaged and received those text messages that are like, "Hey, Susie, I'm just checking we're meeting up in 20 minutes," and been like, "Nope, sorry, wrong number," and then gone back and forth a couple times until I get bored. I didn't realize that was actually a scam. I
Mhm.
did not know. I didn't. I knew that eventually, like if they were going to send me a link, send me money or something along
Sure,
those lines, I knew like I'm smart enough on that, but I just figured it was like a mistake because I've texted people the wrong number
sure.
and something dumb like that before. Totally makes sense. So I didn't realize that on a basic level, it's literally just trying to make friends with someone, which I get. All of these things we're smart about, but it's a conversation that we need to have because I know that if prior to even watching that video that I picked up the pig butchering on, with
Yeah,
all of the security training that I have, I might not have seen this. And if I have the education and training behind me, what about everybody else? That's where we go the kids, old people, the other people in our lives. I know a lot of people who want to make friends. I see it on social dating too. The online,
Sure.
they do the same thing on the online dating, the making friends groups. I
Right.
am a lot of part of a lot of community where I interact with
Sure.
community members online. Those are strangers.
Right.
So those people, they build this relationship and then they start talking about how much money they're making. And then they say, oh, I can help you.
Right.
Oh no, but I'm smart enough to know they're not going to send you money. That's a bad idea. That's
Right.
just dumb. Oh, but this is the system that you're using. And then it goes to the extent when I was watching this video where people will actually like to fact check things, talk to lawyers, look at businesses, talk to like different people, like many different people to fact check if this is a real business.
Sure.
And it's not. And it's completely a scam. The
Yeah.
entire thing. That the how big that is
Sure.
just boggled my mind. And then the reverse side of it, I always like you look at the bad guys, and we used to talk about the bad guy being some kid in the basement. But the bad guys, like it's either the positive of the bad guys, it's big business, your bad guys are making a lot of money.
Right.
So if you have no money and you're in a third world country and you literally can't even feed your family, why wouldn't you do something like this? Like I get that. That makes sense
I
to
mean,
me.
even if it's just for the healthcare benefits, right? Like, I mean,
Exactly.
it's not like they aren't working for a legitimate business. It's
Hmm.
just what they do is, well, in our country, illegal.
Yeah, exactly. But then I heard, I did not know this. They're actually kidnapping and holding people hostage and making
Yeah.
them work for these scams, like the
Yeah.
gangs, and like, which makes sense if you look at the legalization of drugs. And that means there's a whole bucket of money that's no longer being made by the bad guys. Well, where
Right.
else are they going to make that? The
So
size of
it's
this industry is crazy.
so pig butchering, is a unique example of what is ultimately the scenarios that play out in all the different ones, right? I mean, it goes all the way back to the Nigerian prince via fax. Like, if you, I just need to know some bank account details. And then when I get out of the country, then I will give you the stake. We're gonna, and they transfer all the money and they do all the things, and then poof, the money's gone. We haven't gotten any smarter, but I think to your point about like the education piece that you went through, that a lot of organizations today, you're using the know befores and the proof points and the fill in the blank for your cybersecurity trainings, security awareness training. And one of the things that I'm starting to be worried about is that we're being trained on very specific things. So like learning to see how typo squatting works, or how the way the email is written, or understanding that your bank would never send you this email. The reality is, all I have to do is figure out how to get in your head. So I think what we're seeing shift is the more information you put online, LinkedIn, social media, all they need is something that's prompts that little idea, that little nugget that says, oh, they love shopping at fill in the blank. Now all you've got to do is create a very well crafted email. Whether you speak English well or not, you got ChatGPT and other tools that will do it just fine for you, and put that in front of them. And so it's the things like when a company says, no, I don't want the external, this came from an external source at the top of the email, because that's annoying. And then I have to scroll down to actually read the email. Well, no, if you don't recognize that it's from an external source out of the gate, you already have your guard down that this is going to be a legitimate email. And we see it all the time. Like, I got an email from so and so. Why is it in quarantine? Like, well, obviously because it didn't come from your domain, or it came from your domain, but it didn't hit the fact checks of saying it passed the integrity check. So it's a spoof. And I think that's where I've, I know I have made the mistake before. I have been able to crawl it back before I had to worry about it. And I've also clicked on ones that were legit. I clicked on one for LinkedIn. It's probably been 6 or 7 years now. It was like, hey, the first 50 people that click on this link and sign up for a demo, I'll send a free pair of Studio Beats headphones. And I'm like, cool. Granted, that was 5 years ago, but still, like, I shouldn't have done. I mean, they had the scams then, and afterwards, I was like, I'm never gonna get these headphones. I want to know what's gonna happen to me. And about 2 weeks later, I did get a pair of headphones in the mail. If they were real Studio Beats headphones, I'll never know for sure. They did sound a lot like them, and they lasted for a very long time, so I'm not complaining. But again, it played on my emotion and what I enjoy and what I'm interested in. So like, how do you create videos that are specific to Des, right? Like, okay, I got this. I'm going to do some simulations to ensure that does falls victim and I can prove the point and shame you in front of the rest of the organization of why'd you click on that, which is
Mhm.
the other problem we have too, right? Like even the scoring model for the courses we take, your score is lower if you don't report enough of the bad things. Well, I deleted them. I didn't click on the link. Like, why are you still marking me down for not telling you that I'm aware of what you sent me? Like, there's a lot of challenges with this. So, I go back to what you said though, and saying, okay, who does this impact the most? So we know this is going to impact the two categories that see this education the least, kids and old people. So we know why pig butchering exists. You're lonely and you get that profile friend, and it can fall into so many different categories, right? Like I worked with one that was definitely, he was lonely, older guy, and fell for it.
Mhm.
$1 million later, can't get it back. Like the FBI is like, yep, you lost the money. Thanks for telling us. It's part of an ongoing investigation. Hopefully we can get him. But you also shared one that was more of like kid type stuff
Mhm.
and what that is, which is, I think, significantly different as far as the impact on the emotional, the ability to emotionally handle what has happened. So talk about that one a little bit, because I think these are both problems that we
Huge
have to
problems.
solve for in our jobs.
I I don't even know if like I agree they're huge problems. And for me, it's just I love to have this conversation because I think it's important conversation to have in every room. Like I think this
Sure.
that every table should have this conversation, especially with the kids and the old people, and you should have it
Yeah.
over and over again. Kids are just so influenced and they have so much going on in their lives. And I remember how stressed I was when I was a kid. And so I was the story I talk about,
That was 10 years
excuse
ago,
me,
right?
yeah, 10 years ago.
Yes.
The story I talk about is like a girlfriend of mine calls me one day and she says, "So hypothetically, if," and then she's like, "Okay, this happened." Her son met someone online, which I can totally see nowadays.
Right.
Like you meet someone from another
It's
school,
easier.
just so much easier. Met someone online from another school, had total profiles, and they started really hitting it off. And they're 15 years old and maybe alienated in their own school and trying to make friends and like whatever. So you meet someone online and they do as 15-year-old kids do, and they sent pictures
Yeah.
and those pictures were definitely not appropriate. And that instantly went where it stopped. And those were scammers that were now going to release all that information to their entire school network, life-changing information. Like we see the bullying that actually happens where kids do actually commit the suicides, where these
Yeah.
actually other kids do this to them. So this is a stranger who's saying, "I'm going to do this to you." And that kid's first response was to think about suicide.
Yeah.
And luckily enough, they were close enough with their parent that they were open to have a conversation and admitted what they did. And that's when the parent called me and I said, "You don't do anything. You just ignore it. And chances are it's going to go away because all they want is if you give them money, they're going to want more
Yeah.
money and more money and more money. It's just a scam. It's a lesson to learn from." So they were really lucky to get out of it scot-free, emotionally
Yeah. Yeah.
better off, lesson learned. But
Yeah.
if we know how many kids this affects when it's in real life and actually does happen, think about how many kids, if you get that kind of message and you think it's a stranger and your entire life is going to be gone, I can see why that's why the conversation is so important.
Yeah. I saw it a lot. So I spent 4 years in this K-12 space, and a lot of that has, well, scarred me forever. But a lot of it was tied to sex trafficking, that kind of thing,
Mhm.
taking advantage of minors. And the one thing that was always difficult is you can't prevent someone from getting into a car with a stranger if they do so willingly. Like I can tell you don't do that, you shouldn't do that, but I can't physically stop you from doing that. And we had several cases where, the FBI is involved and they're showing up in my office. And anytime you see law enforcement, it doesn't matter how innocent you are. Like it's like when you see lights coming from behind, you're like, oh man, they're pulling me over, and then they go flying by, and you're like, like it's just the we're programmed that way. And I think that because we're so unwilling to take time out from normal curriculum, from normal day-to-day things to focus on this stuff that's uncomfortable, it continues to live in the shadows. It continues to be what largely, I mean, surprisingly that the friend of yours was willing to talk, like getting the kids to talk. I mean, everything from, using dad's credit card to hire somebody online thinking that no one will ever know. And it's like you're talking to this kid and like but you used your dad's credit card. Like, how do you think this isn't tracked? Or like, what do you mean my stuff that I put on the internet's there forever? What do you mean Snapchat's not instantly gone? And when you explain it to the kids and show them the amount of information you have on them just from their school account, it just makes their heads explode. They don't understand how much information that's just like flowing around them that they every once in a while dip into the river, but it just keeps going. Like, and it's never gonna stop. And anybody that wants to cue it and pull something from the past, no problem. Here it is. Same with the older group, right? Like, so the younger group gets and understands and uses technology. They're native to it. They don't know how it was created and they don't care. And then the
Mhm.
older group might have been involved in creating it in the early stages, but they have no idea how to use it and how it impacts them. They still want the physical phone book because that's easier than, you know, looking it up in like maps or something simple. And like, let me go get the phone book. I'm like, no, I already got the number. Like, what do you mean you already got the number? Well, I asked my friend that's on my phone, AI, and I have the phone number, right?
Yeah, it's a
So have you seen
huge,
any
huge thing.
crazies? You got kids, any crazies that you think happened to the old people?
So old people, I love that these stories happen directly in my life. Like, yeah, I've got
Sure.
a huge community, but it's crazy to me because I don't feel like I know that many people to know so many people it's affected. And so I've got two stories. I had two friends of mine whose parents have lost a big chunk of their life savings. And both of them got all the way to the store buying iPhone cards and giving the iPhone cards, and one person was at the bank and on the phone and was severely threatened. Like she was deadly convinced that they were following her, and
Sure.
both of these people gave away like big chunks of their life savings, and it was the same idea. This one I like it doesn't it feels more like the old prince,
Yeah.
but it's also changing so quickly that it's going to shift anyway. So this
Yeah.
conversation is still valid and important. But now we are talking to our old people and saying, no, no one's ever going to want you to pay in an iPhone gift card. No one's going to
Right.
ever ask for a gift card, like no business. And that
Like,
seems
why
like
are they
common
asking
sense.
me to walk to Best Buy to get the gift cards? Like, why can't I take an Uber or drive there? Like, it's
But it's still so important to have because it
yeah.
happens all the time.
It does. It happens all the time. I've had it happen to my parents. I've had it happen to my mom. Yeah, I get it. Let's shift gears a little bit. So you've landed at another security company. You're at Astendio, which is magic for compliance. Harry Potter magic, right?
Yeah.
Um, so the first thing that came to mind when you started sharing the backstory is about where Ostendio came from. It's been
Mhm.
13 years, and the story, like, we could talk GRC platforms all day. Before I came to CompTIA, that was one of the primary things I did was evaluate, do they actually get it? Do they understand what a risk register is? Or are they creating some cyber insurance magic to let me answer questions and then tell me how compliant with some framework I am that I don't even understand? And what you said to me that made it really stand out as being different is when you said that this was built by CISOs, by those that are responsible. And the reason why I bring it up after you shared that with me now is just as I was thinking about it, it's like this is the one area we're seeing play out in the media right now where the person that's taking the fall for a company, no matter how good or bad they might have been at their job, it's being tied to one person, and it's often the information security officer or the CISO. So tell the audience, tell them why this is so important with this platform, this tool that has been built, because I think the story is far greater than the tool, right? Like there's lots of tools.
Yep. Yeah, I love the story. That's what Paul Redding and I talked one day, and he told me about the company. He told me the changes they were making, and he told me about the go-to market and how we're going to interact with the channel. And I was sold. And then I came in and learned about the product. So I was sold before the product.
Right.
And especially knowing Paul, Paul has been around in cliency forever. So, or he knows the industry. So when
Sure.
he decided to make this move, I'm like, it totally makes sense. So the way Ascendio is explained to me is we've been around for 11 years and built by CISOs, and the CISOs looked at the industry and were like, there is a problem. Compliance is a problem and it's going to be bigger and bigger, but security is a bigger problem.
Sure.
And so many compliance platforms and when you talk about compliance, people who are talking about compliance, they're looking at, okay, what do I need to do to be compliant? Whereas
Right.
we went backwards because of the CISOs, and they said, CISO said, how do I become secure? And then where does compliance fit in there? So what are the steps I need to do to keep my business and make my business secure? So
Sure.
this is where Ascendio came out, and they spent 11 years selling to CISO, selling to MSSPs, but really just spending 11 years head down creating the product. So then they decided to come to channel. And when they first came to channel, their pricing for the channel was outrageous. It doesn't fit the thought process. It just doesn't work. But the problem is they had this huge, massive product with so much information in it that the value is there.
Sure.
But we already put all the effort and work into it. So why don't we knock the prices down for the channel and make it so it's affordable and accessible, and so that way security is for everybody. So we opened it up. We got Ken Verone on. He's been in the channel forever. He understands. He's used the platform for years and years, and he understands that he used it to grow his business to a massive success. So he came on board and he looked at the channel and said, okay, MSPs, you need to have security able to access it. So then we created our partner program. We built everything for the channel, and also like we need more help from everybody, so we're always looking at support from the channel to tell us how to grow further. But we're going to create like the whole Reddit forums, the whole forums where people can interact and talk about their own influences and how they work.
A feedback
Then we
loop.
Yeah, yes. And then also creating the different forums, but then we're also, to become a partner, it's free. Why? Because security and compliance should be accessible for everyone. So
Yeah.
for any of our MSPs who come on, it's a free partnership. They get their own not for resale license to help their own business. And then we give them 3 concurring licenses to do risk assessments on 300 plus different compliance frameworks.
Oh, wow.
That's huge. Like
So
imagine,
I just
ima-
have all these
yeah,
questions. Like I just like
yeah,
let me
go
ask
ahead.
one. I have one question that do you think that the space today understands the value that you're giving them at that level?
I do, based on we were since we made the shift, we were at I think less than 20 partners, and we made the shift less than 6 weeks ago, and we're almost close to 70. So
Nice.
I do think that the conversation, I didn't go back to even back in the day, like starting at Passportal or starting at Datto. I would go to peer groups or different events, and they would be like, we need you to bring some content. I'm like, what's valuable? We had the risk assessment checklist that Brian Weeks and I can't remember the two other companies that had put together years and years ago.
The
And
RPO,
this,
RTO?
yeah, that one.
Yeah,
So I would show up with that risk assessment,
sure.
and they would be in awe over it. But it's just a sheet of paper with like some check marks, and it
Right.
was pretty much out of date within like 3 months, anyways. I loved that because it was a powerful tool that was literally helping businesses be secure. We talked about how important security is. We talked about how, like, we talked about it from like the how it's fitting the end users, not even the SMB. That's an entire different conversation.
Yeah.
But the idea, I think it was someone that told me once that MSPs or SMBs are the only people who want to spend 80 hours of work an 80-hour week working for themselves so they don't have to work for someone else. That's heart, soul, that's missing kids' birthdays, that's like everything. And they can lose their business like this.
Yeah.
So having a framework where you can literally walk through where it's that a risk assessment that was so cool so many years ago,
Yeah.
and you can walk through your business, but then also taking that tool and doing it with your clients or your prospects where you're using a compliance framework, but you can also build your own. So even if you have your own standard that within your business and you say, okay, prospect, client, A, B, we're going to do this to figure out where you are. And then we're going to set goals about where you need to be. And we're going to do a whole path of what that looks like. Now, setting the goals, that's all included. That's a free partnership. It's not until you actually start working with your clients to get to the next steps that you start paying us money. So I feel that feels so good with me when it comes to the channel and knowing how the vendors go to market strategy has been shifting so much. And there's so many vendors who come into the channel and are like, we're going to make the MSPs work with us the way we want them to. And then it
Yeah.
doesn't work. This is the opposite. We're looking at the MSPs, we're looking at the channel and saying, how do you think you're going to work with us best? And so far, this seems to be hitting the game. And then we have a really cool go-to-market strategy that we'll be announcing at Beyond, which is going to be fun.
Nice. I will be at Beyond.
Me too.
Uh, so we have a few minutes left. One of the things that comes to mind is thinking about the things that we've at CompTIA been putting in front of MSPs and MSSPs, and that is kind of to your point, looking at compliance and what are you complying with. And when we built the trust mark, one of the things that was really important to us was to build something that was specific to solution providers. We hadn't really done that before. And the second piece of that was to do it from the lens of security first mindset or a security maturity model. So no pass fail, but the reality is obviously that, those that don't commit the time to it, whether you pass fail, you still haven't done it. So there's a difference between passing and failing and not getting the trust mark. But that being said, it pulls from lots of different frameworks and it really sets the stage for solution providers. And you said a couple of things that I think is really important. Solution providers need to adhere to a set of standards, whether it's standards that they've created for themselves, which I think is a heavier, steeper climb because it then implies a maturity already existing rather than taking what has been built by those who are mature and setting a standard. So I think it's really powerful what you're proposing here that, setting the stage for solution providers to be successful in their own environment to then be able to take that client facing. One of the challenges that we have, and maybe this is an area for us, Stendio, to help is, MSPs are quick to say, okay, I've got the trust mark. Now, can I use this with my clients? Like, but this wasn't built for your clients. This is different than what you should do with your clients. So the idea that we had, and we've been just kind of chewing on it, and I'll just share it so anybody listening knows what the idea is that what about the MSP's client trust mark profile or client standards profile? It's not the same as what they're doing. It shouldn't be. They're not the same type of entity. So we were sort of slowing down and saying, before we create a client profile for the trust mark, we should have an MSP client facing profile because they have the trust mark. And so those are the areas where like that's the next step in our opinion from a brainstorming standpoint. We will be announcing, I think at ChannelCon, we'll probably be announcing the vendor profile. There's a lot in the works on that one. It'll at least be in draft mode by ChannelCon. But yeah, like I assume that's stuff that Ostendio is interested in helping with. And I think that's
Mhm.
one of the things that's really different about talking to you and talking to some of the other vendors is that there's this excitement around how do we get to participate in raising the tide, particularly in the channel, particularly with solution providers, because the reality is we look at this from a global perspective. This is the only group that really has the ability to impact the positive change on a global level when it comes to the cybersecurity posture for themselves and their clients.
I I can't speak for Ken or Paul,
Sure.
my bosses, but I think that we should definitely, I'm excited for a further conversation about that because I think with having over 300 plus frameworks gives a really good opportunity to
I think that's all of
break
them.
down, yeah, to break down all of those frameworks into like a baseline
Yeah.
and like then just playing with it and working it together, like maybe putting it out to two, 3 dozen MSPs and saying,
Yeah.
does this baseline work for you? And then you literally from there have the actual baseline. I think that's an amazing idea. And I know it's been a conversation that's been in the industry for quite a while that there isn't a standard for security when it comes
Sure.
to these conversations. So yeah, that's going to be really fun.
Pen testing too, right? So we've actually been talking to a couple of vendors on the pen testing front, and one of the ideas is if I tell you as an MSP that you need to have a penetration test, that doesn't mean that you have the experience to go and do one that's properly scoped for your organization. So what we've been talking about is what if we were to enable pen testing companies to help frame a templated version of a penetration test that's built around because they went through the trust mark. To your point, a security first mindset that complies with a set of standards as opposed to, I know I have to do this one thing. And if I do this one thing well, then I'll get a passing check mark and I can move on to something that I care about.
Yeah, yeah, I like it. I like it a lot.
Anything else you want to share with the audience before we wrap
Yes.
this up?
One more thing, just because we kind of talked about ChannelCon, and I'm super, super excited for it. There is a lot of always educational content at ChannelCon that can go several different routes. I'm participating in one of panels where we're going to talk more details about the layoffs, what to do with the mental health conversation around the layoffs, how to support each other, how to stay positive, how to stay valuable to the industry, how to grow
Yeah.
your brand, all of those fun things. So I hope anyone watching or comes and joins us at ChannelCon, it's going to be a really good, interesting conversation.
We've really never seen this before in our industry, right? Like we've seen layoffs, we've seen lots of layoffs. We've never
Mhm.
seen LinkedIn explode with those in leadership positions say, "Hey, message me offline. We're going to find you a place to land." Like I've never seen that in
Mhm.
25 years. I've never seen since the inception of LinkedIn anybody going out publicly and saying, "I know a few people that would be great for fill in the blank job. Can we please have a conversation?" And it's happening.
Mhm. I 100%. I looked at my experience for being laid off and the fact that it was a really tough time, but I had for what it was an amazing experience. I had so many doors open up for me just by posting and saying, "So this has happened. I need help," or "Does anyone have any projects?" or "How do I stay valuable? Who can I interact with? Who
Yeah,
can I help with things?" And I was really lucky for it. And if I learned through the experience that not a lot of people, not everyone has the same thought processes and not everyone is as proactive. So
they
you
say
don't think about
process.
those that Canadian, but um, so not everyone has all that. So it does, people struggle because they
Yeah,
don't know. But if I could have said anything to my 20-year-old self and anyone who does not work on networking and building the community around you, that is the most paramount. There's so many people I've talked to who are laid off or have been laid off, who can't get an interview, but are interviewing left, right, and center based on their network and people like handing them or being the right
yeah.
person at the right time. One of those people in Calgary, I sent out so many resumes, and even though my experience level is quite high, I couldn't even get through the hiring process, let
Oh,
alone like the
geez.
very first. So I'm really lucky. Community and network is everything, and that's why at ChannelCon, the fact that we're going to have that conversation is going to be so powerful.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. For those of you listening, this has been an episode of MSP 1337. Thanks and have a great week.